kind of deal with the fact that you can only really deal with what's probable at this moment and not leave that person holding on to something that could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think that this is probably one of the most delicate situations that you come into as someone who works in the Akashic Records. And I think it's very important that you have a high level of integrity around this. And so the way that I always, I have women who come to me and say, should I leave my husband? Or like, is this the person I'm supposed to be with? Or what do you see am I going to have kids? Like all of these things. And, you can certainly say there's some energy held in this way, but there are so many different timelines and there are so many different decision points that could shape the probability, like you said. And so you have to be very, very cautious in making any vast projections into the future for anyone. And so the way that I always work with that is, I tell the person, why don't you look at the energy and the way is true for you and make the next best decision? And you don't need to, and I think this is a very dangerous thing with the Akashic Records as well, is that everyone thinks like, they say that Nostradamus actually tapped into the Akashic field, and this is actually how he was able to forecast some of the things that happened and, some of the predictions he made. So like you can do that to a certain degree and you can kind of see, okay, with the direction things are happening, it could be this, like the probability that you were saying. But there's so many different timelines converging and consciousness is shifting so fast right now that to say, okay, in 10 years, we're going to have a civil war is like, we have no idea the way that consciousness is going to shift, the way that we as a collective are going to put input into this conscious field to change the direction or the subtle nature of the unfolding. And so I think you just have to be really, really present with what's true in the moment and share with the person what's true here and not making any vast projections. The one caveat I'll say to that is that there are often times where spirit babies come in or, babies that want to incarnate with that person.
I have 2 of them.
Yeah, I know you do. And so those are things I will share because they're right there in the subtle field. They're right there in the very, in proximity to the person. So, if they're there and they're right, like in the room with us, basically, then those are things I will share and I will bring through. But other than that, I really don't go super far into the future and try to make any, sweeping forecasts about people's life. I just think there's too many things that are changing in every moment.
I looked into the Akashic Records a minute ago and it told me Penny would hand me a fresh smoke, and it was right.
See, you can do it minute by minute. Minute by minute's great.
Yeah.
Don't go beyond 2 to 3 minutes. That's it.
I read an article by somebody who was either a quantum physicist or very skilled in quantum physics. It might have even been Fred Alan Wolf in one of his books. But he gave the example that because of the environment we're in, you can't make predictions like Nostradamus did anymore. And one of the reasons I think that's the case is because now we have the internet and we can know who farted in Africa and at the speed of light.
Yeah.
So before, when Nostradamus was making predictions, communications moved very slowly. The probability wave wasn't near as populated. There wasn't as many people on the planet. Things weren't buzzing so intensely. But now with the internet, you've got, we know what's going on everywhere. You can find out what's going on. You can literally call somebody in Russia and say, I just heard this on the news. Is this true? Is this really happening? And they'll tell you yes or no. And unfortunately, a lot of it's no because of all the bullshit. But I think that the probability wave is now so much more jacked up with information. In his book, Robert O. Becker, The Body Electric, he says that, I think that book was written about 92 and maybe right around 92, 95, 96, somewhere in there. But he said at that time, largely due to cell phones and the internet and social media and television or whatever we had for going on then, which wouldn't be anything like now. He said that the average person today experiences more information in 24 hours than somebody 100 years ago processed in their entire life. So when you consider that book was written in 90-something, now things are way faster, that you can see that the flow of information, and people are so trapped in their heads now. They're not, and when Nostradamus was around, people were killing their own chickens in their backyard, raising their own food, and life was, they were riding horses, and things were a lot slower. So I think it would have been easier because there's more likelihood that somebody's going to repeat the same behaviors and the same patterns when they have a lot less inputs.
Yeah, there was a steadiness in the subtle nature of things, right? And that just, for better or for worse, we just don't have that same kind of steadiness. We have way more information. And, the astrologists, the yogis, the hippies, they all talk about this age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
The age of Aquarius is the age of information. I mean, and that is truly the age we're in. We are inundated. We are, having to process, like you said, more information than ever. And, it's beautiful on one hand, because that is what's up-leveling this whole game, this whole earth game, is that all of a sudden we're becoming incredible. We have incredible processing power. But at the same time, to make, sweeping projections, it's not the same as it was. Yeah, it's a much different energy field that we're living in.
I know, I have my own theories on this question, but I want to ask it for the audience. Who is it that's keeping the Akashic records? Who uses them and for what purpose?
Yeah, and again, I'll just mention that some people believe it's these eighth dimensional beings. The way that they explain it to me and the way that they show it to me is that they are literally these light bodies, these beautiful light bodies of consciousness that hold the Akashic records. And it's really cute because in the visual that they give me is like they're these little, almost like these little light workers. And they hold it as a service. They hold it as a devotional service to consciousness. And if you think about that, it's so beautiful because, we all have a destiny, right? And so these light bodies have stepped into a destiny path of holding the field of consciousness that is the Akash. And that's the way that they explained it to me and the way that feels good in my body around how this thing exists.
Yeah, I mean, Plotinus speaks of the world soul, but Plotinus used the world the way we use the word universe. And just like we have, a soul of the earth, Gaia, for example, the consciousness of the earth, and a living being with its own life process, its own evolution, its own awakening and becoming, which we're all part of. It would seem to me that the universal soul would contain its own experience and its own memory, just like any soul does. Because without that, you don't have any evolution. You'd just be an Alzheimer's patient.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, we instinctively understand that history has value, that where we came from, where we're going, it has value, right? So why wouldn't the universe understand that about itself? Why wouldn't it be interested in keeping records of its development, of its experience? And so, yeah, it's like it's this universal thing to want to keep the integrity of the experience of itself.
Yeah, that seems logical to me because if you look at Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphogenic fields, and you look at what's called Waddington's Creode, which shows, he gives the example that Einstein gave how space bends around heavy objects like the Earth or anything really, and it shows the example given is like if you take a sheet of rubber and put say a steel ball in it, it'll bend the sheet of rubber. And so Waddington's Creed shows like a valley with a ball rolling through it, and he says that the universe has habits. And so the example is, as the ball's rolling through, it's creating an impression in space, and so things have a tendency to flow, like water flows through a creek, or gravity always finds the path of least resistance. So the universe has these habits. We know the universe has a habit of creating galaxies. We know the universe has a habit of creating round things like stars and planets and asteroids and all these other things out there. We know the universe has a habit of making life, because here we all are. We know the universe has a habit of gravity and the four forces of physics. So it seems to me that the Akashic record would be almost like the unconscious mind of the universe that holds the habits by which it creates. If you were to get pregnant, for example, you would have no idea consciously how that baby's being formed inside of you.
Right.
You could read science books, but there's a lot more that science doesn't know. I mean, all you got to do is look at the different opinions on, at what point a child becomes affected by its environment. And most materialists don't think it has anything at all to do with what's in the womb. But then you get someone like Rudolf Steiner, and he'll tell you it begins being affected from the moment the sperm meets the egg. So,
yeah, or even before.
Well,
right?
There's plenty of reason for that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes affected from the thought form that starts to summon it in, right? Like there's so many. And I was going to just add that, the universe has a habit of moving from darkness to light and back again. And I think that is, one of the things that is interesting about the Akashic records is that it's capturing that kind of pendulum of experience. And it's been explained to me that way before, where it's like, the universe is almost sweeping like a pendulum from side to side, from darkness to light, and gathering information and then becoming a bit more expanded on each round, and gathering a bit more energy and experience in each of those processes. And so, yeah, of course, we want to have a record of that. We want to have some kind of way to consolidate and organize that. The same way we want to organize the files on our computer or anything else. Like we just, it's innate in all of us to just want to make meaning of it somehow, or make structure of it somehow.